Hello, this is Jonny Moseley, and you're listening to the Snow Brains podcast.
A significant winter storm, including heavy snow and flooding and sinking.
Hello and welcome to the Snow Brains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a professional mountain guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snow Brains, and on my first day ever guiding on Mount Rainier in Washington State back in 2007, I was demonstrating ice axe arrests for the group. The owner of the guide service, Peter Whitaker, was guiding and teaching with me that day, my first day. I decided to show everyone there how to do a head-first, chest-down ice axe arrest. I started sliding down the snow, head-first on my chest. As I brought my ice axe around to control it with both hands, the axe clipped the snow and bounced straight into my mouth, and chipped my front tooth, and made a huge, loud bong sound that everybody could hear. The impact shocked me so much that I never did arrest my fall and just kept sliding to the bottom like an injured penguin, where it got flatter and the clients were all there watching me. My boss, Peter Whitaker, looked at me with his mouth absolutely open and simply said, "Okay, moving on," and jumped into the next subject. I really felt like a goat on that first day. Today's Snow Brains podcast is brought to you by Valle Nevado, Chile's premier ski resort located 90 minutes from Santiago, with the largest skiable domain in South America, and world-class heli skiing deep in the Andes Mountains. This episode of the Snow Brains podcast is brought to you by Icon Pass. The moment is now. The best deals of 22-23 season are happening at iconpass.com. Seek summit scenes and future stretch sessions before prices go up $100 and promos end on April 22nd. It's time to keep the stoke alive, seek a season of fun in the mountains, and do you across 50 of the best ski destinations in the world. Discover more at iconpass.com. My guest today is Jonny Moseley. Jonny grew up in the Bay Area skiing at Squaw Valley, Palisades, Tahoe, California. He made the U.S. ski team at just 18 years old in 1993. Jonny won Olympic gold in the mogul competition in 1998 with the now famous 360 mute grab that hugely changed skiing. He also won a silver medal at the 1999 X Games in Big Air, making him the first skier to ever win medals in both the Olympics and the X Games. Jonny won the 2000 U.S. Freeskiing Open slopestyle. At his second Olympics in Salt Lake in 2002, he earned fourth place finish in the moguls, but gained notoriety for performing his signature move, the dinner roll, a 720-degree off-axis spin that did not have a high point value at the time, but was hugely influential and pioneering in the sport. Jonny's won 15 World Cup events during his career and 4 overall titles. He's in the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Even Rolling Stone added Jonny to their Sports Hall of Fame. In 2007, he was inducted into the U.S. National Ski Hall of Fame. Jonny took over voiceovers for the legendary Warren Miller movies. Jonny also became a major television personality who has hosted MTV's Real World and Road Rules. He's announced at least 3 Olympics with NBC. He's announced many World Cup events with NBC. He even got to host Saturday Night Live. He's also hosted American Ninja Warrior and a lot more. Listening to Jonny and hearing his stories was absolutely influential for me, and he's such a fun personality to be around. I really know you're going to enjoy this podcast. Hello, Jonny. Welcome to the show. Thank you very, very much for being here. How are you, man?
Doing really well, Miles. It's great to reconnect with you.
Yeah, and I forgot to ask you, where are you?
I'm actually at my house here in Marin.
Very cool, man. And when did you ski last?
Oh, I just was actually in Kirkwood with my 11-year-old. He was at a big mountain comp. So,
nice.
Yep. I was helping him pick a line and get it all going, and he stuck it and did great. So it was really fun. We went up there and spent the night together in a hotel and had a nice steak dinner, and he went out and competed. So little buddy time and some fun skiing.
That sounds fun, man. How many days do you think you've skied this year?
probably around getting close to 50. I had a full 3 weeks of no skiing when I was out east for the Olympics, hosting a show. So I lost
how was
everything.
That? Yeah. How was that? How was hosting the Olympics? Who were you working for?
A show on Peacock called the Olympic Show.
Very
it was a
cool.
live. Yeah, it was cool. It was a live 3-hour, basically highlight show. So it would be, the morning, like 8 to 11, I think we were on, and we would cover everything that happened. And I had this co-host that I used to host Ninja Warrior with, and we would cover everything, which normally when I do the Olympics, I'm like an analyst just for freestyle and ski cross. And so it was a new role for me, and I really enjoyed it.
Nice, man. Yeah, I saw some of your clips there. It was very cool. It was challenging to get the Olympics that I wanted to see. So I was trying everything. So I was definitely on Peacock. So thanks for that. Well, today we're going to start dig into your mogul skiing career, your TV career, both of which you've excelled in. So we're going to start with rapid fire questions, and then we're going to dig down into some of your bigger stories. How many days do you ski per year?
I think it's probably between 60 and 80, depending on the year.
That's not bad considering your schedule, man.
Yeah, I do. Travel days really kind of knock down your day total. So yeah.
What's your biggest accomplishment in skiing?
I mean, the Olympic gold. I could make up some other stuff, but that's it. Yeah.
What's your biggest accomplishment in life?
I think right now I feel like making this transition in one piece, being able to support a family, and everything going fairly smoothly, and keeping my kids, alive and well right now is pretty big accomplishment.
Agreed. How do you do? It is tough to juggle all that. How do you define yourself?
I mean, from like a career standpoint, how do I define myself?
I like to keep that. I like to keep it open ended to get people's thought process to go into parts of their brain that hasn't gone before.
Yeah. No, it just makes me super uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, that could be your answer. Where's your favorite place to ski? Well,
as you know, and people are going to think I'm just, BSing you, but I really love skiing, Palisades. It's like something I ended up so many places around skiing, living places. And it's just, I always missed it. I always missed the contours and just the whole environment. So it really, truly is one of my favorite places to ski. I mean, behind that, obviously, I've had some incredible times up in Alaska. I spent a lot of time in Telluride, got married there, really like it, like that. And, obviously getting around Europe and Japan is pretty amazing too. So yeah, I'd say those are in the realm.
What would you do if you couldn't ski?
I mean, I find a lot of joy in like trying to make and create and build things. And I think that's somewhere where I'll end up as an old man is something I worked on my dad. That stimulates my mind a lot. And I find a lot of gratification in trying to like create things and tinker and build things and try to make solutions to things. So I think that's what I would do mostly.
I like that. I feel like a lot of us as we get older like that stuff.
Yeah. I think that's probably where I would end up. I mean, but there's so many sports I love too. I mean, I would love to be a better surfer and be able to do all those things. I think I'm running out of time. That's just a sport that is really hard for me, but it's something that I definitely like geek out on and just looks amazing. Like it holds the same allure for me as like skiing and stuff,
I'm with you in surfing, and I just put, I like to surf, and I put 5 months straight into it last summer. And I got better. That. Maybe it was the best I've ever been, but I mean, it's just, I'm not still terrible. It's just like, it's such a difficult sport.
Enough said. That's how I feel too. It just doesn't work. I mean, I think it really comes down to like something about like the way my trunk works, getting my knees up under my arms. Like, I think maybe my arms are too short. I'm going to blame it on that. Like, versus the rest of my torso. Like, I can't get my knees up underneath my nipples when I need to, like with keeping my hands on the ground. And even when I train, it's like, those guys, I've heard, doesn't they say like Kelly's got an extra vertebrae or something like that?
I believe it.
He can lift his upper body up higher so he can see over the waves. Like he's, I don't know. I wasn't made for it. Let's put it that way.
Johnny T-Rex Moseley, your new nickname.
Exactly.
I like it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Short arms.
Short arms Moseley.
Totally.
That's why you pick skiing.
Great for moguls, great for moguls.
Yeah, perfect. What scares you the most in the mountains?
I mean, I have the same fear. The avalanche is definitely, even though I don't spend a ton of time out there, that's just, it's a scary notion of getting buried in the uncontrollable, the unknown.
What do you love most in the mountains?
I mean, I get a certain sense of just, I guess, nirvana out there, where I'm sort of feeling relaxed and you get this satisfaction from this feedback from trying to do something and achieving it. So like the constant, you're getting a constant flow of that feedback loop is constantly going. And then I just love, obviously the beauty and just those moments, like when you're up there late or you're up there early and you just looking around like, wow, this is majestic.
And especially when you live in the mountains, for me, I feel like it's just a doorway. I can just open up a door and walk into another world. And not everybody has access to that. So I think the mountains really deliver that, for me, at least. I think for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What's the scariest accident you've had in the mountains?
There's two. I wrecked myself, maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Ooh.
Doing a backflip, which I had done, my history. I used to do aerials. I'd done triple twisting, triple backflips. I mean, they just became like this very easy thing for me. And I had stopped, and I had taken tons of hits when I was, competing. And I was skiing, doing like a corporate thing out in Telluride, and I ran into an old coach, and he said, "Oh, they're having a kids mogul contest over there on the other side of the mountain. Go jump in there and say hello." So I'm like, yeah, I brought my group over there and had them go down the course and kind of wait for me. And I got into the stall, and they announced me at the bottom, and there was just one small air, and say hello to the kids. They're like 9. And so I ski down.
I already see where this is going.
The parents are at the bottom, and I'm like, skiing. I'm like, I probably should just do a 360. I haven't looked at this. I'm on like a pair of like demo skis, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just do a backflip, whatever. So I just lay into this thing, and right away, dude, I'm like, oh shit, I'm by. Like I'm stretching through my fingernails. Like I'm like, should I, and I'm like, should I pull for 2 right now? I don't think I quite have that. And I just missed my feet completely and just slammed. Like this thing had it was kind of one of those jumps that was built into a knoll. So it looked, looked smaller than it was. And so I zinged it and over rotated, landed on my head, neck, and shoulders, no feet, and just bounced and, knocked the wind out of myself. Immediately my traps, all that stuff lit up. And I was like, oh crap. And the whole place just went dead silent, and I sort of like do a little check, and I like stand up, and I like, ski down, and everyone's looking at me like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And I get down, and anyway, long story short, I was actually rooming with like Franz Weber and JT Holmes and Franz Klammer. And I spent the, couple days like laying on the bed. I got picked my head up, and it was like a hit I had done before, but I was like, something's different here. And anyway, fast forward, I ended up, it wasn't getting better. And I went to the doctor, and she took the x-ray, and she came out with like a hard collar. It was like, you fractured C5.
Oh, damn.
And so I was
and just for our listeners, C5 is, 2 vertebrae up on it's a cervical vertebrae.
Yeah, it's a bad one. And I was lucky it wasn't displaced. I consulted everyone. I didn't have to get surgery, but it was scary in that it was a real wake-up call. It made me reflect on my whole life. I obviously had small kids at the time, and it made me realize how lucky I was to do all the things I had done and sort of get away with it. It also made me realize that, when I was really in my career and training hard, that stuff happened, but not very much, because I would always progress into things. Your day would be all about skiing, right? Like,
focus.
Whereas now I kind of come in and out of these places, and then my ego gets the best of me, and so I can still do these things, but I'm not prepared for them, and I'm not working in them. So I basically, at that point, quit cold turkey on flipping because I just knew I wouldn't be able to like dabble.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, smart.
So anyway, that was probably my scariest moment. I mean, I haven't been in any avalanches, but I did have, my first time ever filming up in Alaska in the Chugach.
Uh-huh.
I had scoped this line and I came like through this choke and I was coming in hot and I all of a sudden saw a cliff that I don't remember seeing. So I like slammed the brakes on, but I got squashed and got ejected out of the turn and did like a full, the full cartwheels over the rocks. So that one scared me and definitely woke me up to the last. Oh, I thought of a funny fall actually.
Let's hear it.
Now that we're on it, that was one was scary. And unfortunately they reeled out. So I don't have it on film. Like
no, because they probably, they ran out of reel. Okay.
I guess. Yeah. They were back in the day. So I haven't seen it, but there's the beginning part of the line, but they ran out of film. So, but I did think of a funny crash. So
good.
1996, I was on the World Cup tour and obviously Alaska was starting to crank, and I was like, I got to go there. I mean, I'm not filming or anything. I had a buddy who was like, not a pro, just like, we're going, you coming? And I'm like, sign me up, dude, let's go. So we go do the Anchorage and we go up there and we stay in Valdez and we're shooting with who I think we were flying with Dean. And it's my first run in Alaska ever. We get to the top of, I think it's called Griffin, that couloir out there. It's this beautiful couloir. I mean, it's, 2,000 feet or whatever, maybe more. And it's, it's 40 feet wide. And it's perfect snow, no exposure, perfect steepness. And I'm just like, oh yeah, this looks freaking amazing, and the guys kind of give you the riot act and all that stuff. And I had these, and I drop into that thing and I lay into that thing like I'm freaking Bodie Miller, right? Like GS turning down this bad boy. I got my long skis and, by the fifth turn, I didn't, it had built up a runnel and the trench was like 5 feet wide or 6 feet wide and it was getting deeper and wider. And by like the fifth turn, I tried to hop across it and I cased to the other side and, ended up backwards, upside down, going down the whole runnel and went down the whole chute upside down.
Your slough.
My slough created a trench in the middle of the chute, right? Just totally something I'm like idiot to and no idea, which is, and which they probably told me, but I didn't listen. Get all the way to the bottom and the guide's like, this isn't a freaking World Cup GS force, you idiot. Like,
I bet they were pissed.
You think you're good up there, but this isn't like, and it was like the best thing I could ever happen to me. Probably saved my ass in Alaska is he lit me up on my first run and put me in check.
That's good though. That's the welcome to Alaska run.
Exactly. That was awesome.
Nice. Great story. And when he says Dean, is Dean Cummings, who had H2O heli up here for years. So yeah, thanks for that's a great story, man. And, and we'll switch to a more somber note because I think we don't talk about this enough in the skiing world, but we all lose friends out here. How many friends have you lost in the mountains?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's a steady clip. I've never really counted them, I guess. I mean, because I do consider a lot of guys that maybe they wouldn't even know me as a friend, as people that I would lose. Obviously, Shane and CR, I was closest to them, and we just lost Scotty Lapp, who was a really close friend of my son's and our friends and our very close friends of mine. And, that one hurt, that's a kid and he was just skiing around, they were, and so, it's kind of a scary sport in that way. But obviously Roner, was a guy I knew well, not super well, but consider him, a friend. So, I mean, it's just, I feel it with everybody, all these guys. And so it's tough because, we obviously love the sport and you're always kind of right there, on the edge, and it's super painful. Agreed.
Absolutely agree. So you said you have not been in any avalanches?
I haven't. No.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, my exposure has been, limited. So I'm lucky. I haven't encountered that yet. So
that's good. And then you said you broke your neck skiing. I always thought, not to make it funny, but I feel like in that story, the kids who got to watch you, that will be their story, you know, for their whole lives. Like, yeah, I watched Jonny Moseley break his neck. You know, it just sounds crazy to say that, but I'm sure they do.
That is funny you bring that up, because I was, I was commentating for the Olympics, I believe in Russia, Sochi. And so for moguls. And so, you know, I do all this research, and the older I get, you know, the more removed from the actual competitors I am, because I haven't skied with them. Some of them weren't even born when I was competing. Yeah. Exactly. And so, you know, but I try to go hang out with these athletes. That's how I get information. Smart. And so I sneak onto the course, and I know all the officials, and they know me, so I can get this information. And I pull up on this American girl, Tess Johnson. She goes, "Yeah, I know you. I was in the gate at Telluride when I was like 7 or 8, 9 years old, and when you came in and you crashed when you were at the bottom of the thing." So it totally came full circle. That's how she remembers me, as the guy who did it, like over rotated a backflip to his head, pounded it in front of everybody when she was 9. She was like, "Oh, I think she said I had to go next."
Oh God! After you broke your neck,
she was all freaked out, but she did great. She crushed a great World Cup career. Oh, that is tough,
though. Yeah, I'm in the starting gate. Freaking Jonny Moseley, who's right before me, breaks his neck. I have to wait for him to get carted off. That's great, man.
Oh my God!
He's wiping tears from his eyes. That's great. Yeah. Nice, man. Well, and on that note, so you have broken your neck. What other injuries have you had? What other ski injuries have you had?
Yeah, I will say I've been extremely lucky, and I think it was, 90% of why I was able to move through the ranks and stuff quickly. I never did my knees or anything, but I did my shoulder pretty good, doing aerials, pounded in, triple. I think it was my first ever full triple twisting, triple back. I came in short, landed head, shoulders, everything at the same time. Stuffed it in and just dislocated that thing, and it broke a bone on the way out. So,
And you're talking about aerials, like in the Olympics, the big straight up crazy jumps.
Yeah, because I used to do. Yeah, I was a combined skier, man. I did all 3 events all the way up until '96. Actually, I was the combined World Cup champion at one point. So I did. So I would train. Yeah, my best trick in aerials was I worked up to like triple twisting, triple backflip. So I would compete that on the World Cup tour. Then I'd go do ballet, and then moguls, all 3 events. Oh yeah. One time I hit the ramp, the water ramp in the summer at full speed I caught an edge in the transition and just slammed into that thing, peeled off the end. Yeah. It wasn't I was out for a couple of weeks with a big bruise, but that was okay. I did my ankle, landed backwards at a big air in Whistler. But I'm telling you, I've been really lucky. I had a minor back injury that kept me out for a couple of weeks, but I never was out with like a season. I had enough concussions that scared me. Those really started to sort of factor into my retirement, if you will. I mean, I remember, you hit your head, you ring your bell often at doing, all the stuff I was doing, but then you have the bigger concussions that when you come to and you're yelling at people. That happened to me in Japan one time. We were at a big air contest out there and I was all alone, and I wasn't all alone, but it was just, it was a scary moment. And you just realize when you hit the scariest ones are the head, just because you are affected. Agreed. You feel different for a couple weeks, and you realize, okay, that could, I could lose a leg, and that would really affect my life, but not in the same way. Like you mash your brain. So those ones scare you,
Agreed. And they seem to kind of accumulate too, right? The more of them you have, the worse they are, and the more sensitive you become. That's not good. I do want to highlight for our listeners, though, that you were essentially a professional ballet skier, and that you did, the triple, the I think what you called it, the combined. So you're doing ballet, you're doing aerials, and you're doing the moguls. And I know that's what's in the movie Hot Dog, right? The very famous, Squaw Valley, Palisades, Tahoe soft porn movie, Hot Dog. And so I don't know what it is, and I might be going on a limb here, but supposedly there's a story that you have about the hot dog movie, and is there something there, or am I making this up?
Yeah, no, Hot Dog the movie is a very influential piece in my whole career. So I have two older brothers that are 5 and 6 years older than me. And, we started skiing Palisades when I was 3 or 4. So, they're up in the 9-10 range. That was right around the time when Hot Dog was starting to be filmed there. Anyway, it was a movie that I was probably super inappropriate for me to watch. But of course, having older brothers, they of course had seen it by that time right away. And that's really, that at the time, that all being filmed there was kind of the inspiration, I think, for them to start. Freestyle was all happening at that time, right? The World Cup was flourishing. It was starting to be considered for the Olympics, but it wasn't in. But Hot Dog the movie was this big deal. And so, of course, we all watched that. And my older brother was like, yeah, freestyle. Well, that's what we want to do. And
that's it.
There happened to be a Kevin Whiteman who had just formed the freshly minted freestyle team. He was a World Cup combined skier, and he had this dual mogul contest on KT under, I don't even know, they call it Schimmelfinnig or something to the left of the fingers. It was right down that.
Oh,
and
it
was a dual. Yeah, it was super steep. Dual mogul contest. The judges at the bottom, red flag, blue flag. Anybody could sign up. They used to call it King of the Hill. It was a series. And so my brother entered us in it, and we skied that thing and had a great time. And I was this little Grom, and I had been on the Mighty Mites at that point. And the coach was like, Kevin White was like, you guys got to come join the freestyle team. So basically my brother went to my dad, is like, they were on the race team at the time, and was like, we want to do freestyle. My dad was like, all right. He thought downhill was a little maney anyway. So he sent us over there, and like our first day of freestyle team, I think we joined the next year, but was ballet, man. They brought us up on East Broadway, and Kevin Whiteman was a big ballet skier. And so we learned, how to do ballet, and then we would change our skis and go jump uprights over on Mott's, and then we'd go ski moguls in the afternoon, and it was rinse and repeat. And that's how we got into it.
I love that, man. I love that you're doing ballet skiing as your first thing. And, I think a lot of our listeners are probably don't even know ballet skiing. So look it up. And there's some good clips of Jonny doing ballet skiing online.
Oh my God, dude. People are crazy. I was walking home from the village the other day, because we're now at a point where people they don't even, like back in the day, it used to be like, oh, ballet. Yeah. Ballet. Then it got to the point like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Now it's to the point where kids are like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. But I was coming home from the village. I was walking home from the village at Palisades the other day, and I walked by the old movie theater, and I look over at Papoose, and dude, there's a dude like with real ballet poles and skis practicing out there.
No way.
I took a video. I was like, what the heck? Who is, I have to know him.
Yeah.
Anyway, I texted a couple people I thought it might be, and they said no. So I was some rando out there. But yeah, ballet was like my favorite event, and it was the hardest event because you had to practice so much, because you had to learn how to do axles. So think of it as figure skating on skis. Crazy. That's what it was inspired it. So you had to learn how to like jump. So I was learning to jump off my downhill ski inside edge, throw myself up into a 720 and land, and then also had to vault and do flips over my poles. Like, then you had to choreograph it to music. So it gave me, yeah. So like we spent hours, like you had to record the music. Oh my God. My brother and I, it was like, ballet was, we spent so much time trying to figure out ballet. It was crazy.
That is crazy. And to think of you, who became this world-class athlete from there, how do you think ballet helped you? Because to be honest, right, it's, especially to our listeners who don't know much about it, it sounds silly.
It is. I mean, and I think if you look at the original premise for ballet, it wasn't as silly as it was even when I started it. I think the original premise, as Blake will always point out, was, it was like mastery of your skis, right? Like they would come down and you'd have a pair of 210s on, and even back to the wood ski days, and you'd be done with like your skills. We can go back to the history of freestyle in New Hampshire and where they did all that stuff. But part of it was like how good are you on your skis? What can you do on skis?
Right.
And so when you got a pair of 210s on and you're throwing a leg breaker and, you're doing a tip roll, like it's actually pretty macho, right? It was just like, hey, check out. It's very similar to like, when you see like the ski creative guys, like it was just sort of like an addition to your skill set. Like even Dick Durant's, and you look at Stein Erickson, like for them to be able to spin around their skis show that they are freaking amazing because they can roll these leather boots from their inside outside edge, especially on stiff wood skis. So its premise, it started off as having some purpose, and then it just got way too weird. And that was kind of right in the entrance when I got into it. But I will say that I think the thing that I liked about it, and I think the thing that helped me is I'm a glutton for like drills. Like I like to if you give me like a skill, I will freaking hike up that hill and try to learn that skill 1,000 times till I get it. Like, I think that's what I was saying. Like, I am a glutton for that. Yeah. Like, I love that satisfaction of trying to figure out like the nuance in that. So that was something that attracted me. And ballet is obviously like, you never ride the chair. You just use your long poles and you duck walk up and you try it again. You duck. Oh, walk really? Up and try it again. Nice. Of course, when you're doing full runs, but you spend a lot of time just like in a 30-foot space trying to learn a trick. When skiing changed, when we went to twin tips in 96, 95, and the JP and those guys started doing all that.
Yep. JP Auclair.
Yep. JP Auclair, JF, and the French Canadian kids. I was able to jump in right away because I had already been landing backwards in ballet my whole life. Because half the tricks you do, you jump off the ground, you land backwards. Like ballet skis actually do have a twin tip.
Yep.
So I didn't have to really like relearn a ton. Like it was already I had already been learning how to edge backwards and ski backwards and all that stuff. And so it for me as kind of an older guy getting into that, relatively speaking, I mean, I was only 22, but those guys were, 18 or whatever. It definitely helped me down the line in ways that I had not predicted.
That's kind of how I feel about it too. Thinking of and seeing your history now unfolding, that might have been your secret weapon, that especially if you're foray into the big air, the comp scene, and all that slopestyle stuff. And I do want to note, when I was a kid, my dad had ballet skis, and that's what he skied every single day. He had Olin Mark IV comps that were orange. Yeah. Remember those? And they had a little twin tip, and they were wider than normal skis, I thought. And I remember making fun of him and thinking he was such a dork. And oh God, here comes my dad. And they were really short, and now I look back, it's like, he's ahead of his time, man. He had short, fat twin tip skis that everybody has now.
He had the original 1080s. Yeah, no,
exactly.
Those particular skis, the Olin Mark IV, those were sort of the first like all around freestyle ski. And everybody, this was even a little bit before my era, but they would compete, they would do everything on those. They could go, ski little bubs, they could jump, and it was very close to the twin tip. But then everyone started going shorter and shorter. But yeah, the Olin Mark IV, exactly. That was a classic.
Go daddy. I still remember him duct taping his boots together after the buckles broke. You've been on ski trips all over the world. What do you think was your favorite ski trip?
I mean, I did have an epic up there that I go back to, and I'll put it in a different category, and maybe I'll come up with maybe a more endemic one. But as far as like free skiing goes, after 98, the TGR guys called and were like, "Hey, you want to come filming?" And of course I was like, hell yeah.
And 98 was his gold medal year. So he's the man right then.
I was like, I could write my own ticket for, lots of things. And that one came up and I was like, let's go. So I think it was 98 because I think The Realm came out in 99. So I must have filmed in the spring. So we went up to Alyeska and it was Jeremy Jones, Micah Black, Dirk, Steve was probably there. And anyway, so we stayed in town at the hotel there and it snowed like every day. I was like, oh my God. We're not filming anything. We're not going skiing. We're not heli skiing. And we just rode the north face of Alyeska like every day. Nice. And just chasing Jeremy Jones through the trees and Micah, just hanging out at night. We would go out and those guys, I think Dirk's local up there, or they know people. So we'd be at like people's houses eating caribou meat. And we'd go to the bar and everyone would go outside and say, hey, there's the Northern Lights, and just having a generally great time hanging. And then then the weather cleared. And we got some like epic, classic Alaska Chugach, just perfect POW, stable, and, enough to scare the crap out of you, but not, nothing moving and stuff like that. It just was one of those sort of like epic trips that is imprinted in my mind. And then I'll say, I don't know. I've been lucky, I've had some great ones. I skied to Iceland with Warren Miller a few years back, which was pretty amazing. And then some of the trips just traveling with the freestyle team, like springtime and in Switzerland, or, just learn, like when you're young and you're going to these places you've never been and it's all new, and you're competing and there's the other people around, like you're meeting people from other countries and all that stuff. I mean, we had some great times on tour too.
I think, part of what you're referring to is culture, the food, the language, the people, just how they do everything different. But it's all still kind of the same, basic activities, but the ways they do it is so different.
And I think you're right. And it's an adventure. You never know what's going to happen. I remember one particular trip, we were in Quebec in Tremblant, and we were as the World Cup there, and Tremblant's, you don't love going east to ski. Moguls, could be
right?
Nasty, brutish, nasty, but that's a fun town. And we were there during the '99 ice storm.
Ooh,
I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah, I'd never heard of an ice storm either.
No.
So we got snowed in. We couldn't leave this place, and all the power was out, but the chairs could run Jenny's. So we skied a lot. We weren't competing. And the whole town was just, that was who was there. We'd all eat the same restaurant every night, and it was like cold sandwiches, whatever, they could scrape up for us. And, it was like really cool, because you start, in those environments, you get to know people you wouldn't normally talk to. And it just stuck out as another memorable experience that wasn't even like, an epic ski thing. It was just, like you said, it was the people you meet and the different people you get to know better and stuff like that. And that is probably what sticks.
Is there anywhere you would not go back to?
I mean, I was not sad when they said you're not going to China this year, to northern, where the freestyle events were, up in Chongli, 3 hours north of Beijing. I mean,
why?
All adventure is good adventure. I'd been there twice. I was not sad. I love new experiences and everything like that. But man, that's like tundra up there. I mean, it's firm man-made snow and cold and windy all the time. and you're just going like, and you're looking out and it's not inspiring. And it's sort of like, but look, I wouldn't go there, I guess, like if I had to pick anywhere, but I wouldn't say no. They treated us amazing. There's actually a great hotel there. So I'm stretching, but I figured I'd come up with something for you. But yeah.
No, I love that, because some people just basically say, I can't really answer that. I like everywhere. But I love it when we get an actual answer, because a lot of us don't get to travel as much as you guys. So it's cool to hear, all right, well, we could check that. I don't need to go there. So check that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think they gotta have Olympics. They're stretching a little bit with that one.
Maybe somewhere that it actually snows. 100% fake snow is a little weird. Is there anywhere you haven't skied that you really want to go ski there?
Oh my God, the list is lengthy, Miles. I mean, I'm following.
I didn't expect that.
Well, I've been to all these places, or a lot of places on the World Cup tour, and outside of that where I didn't really ski them. Right. Like, right. You go and I find this even, where you're so in your zone that you sort of get up, you do your routine, you go to the mogul course, you train, you come back, and you might ski around a little bit, but you're pretty in this like zone of, and my dad used to really give me a lot of grief about it. You need to stay there and like go enjoy and like check stuff out. And I was just like a hammerhead, no, I gotta go to the next place, I can find the gym and work out and get ready for my next thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, we had plenty of fun, but no, I need to go back. And the European Alps, I mean, I've never gone there just to ski for fun. It's always some, I love to go, do some touring. I've been to Chamonix, but never skied it. I went up to the, Guy de Midi. So like the list is just, it's lengthy.
And I think that makes us feel good too, as normal people that, even Jonny Moseley, he's got tons of places he wants to go ski. So I think that makes us feel good. And I agree with you. I'm 44 now, and I'm definitely going to do a season in the Alps, at least one before I'm 50, because I love Verbier.
So I've never skied there. Absolutely.
You will it's like 10 Palisades, Tahoes stacked on top of each other. It's not that scary, like you're gonna die at any moment, Chamonix shit that I'm actually not into. It's more free ride. You could pick there's a cliff there and then there's a chute here. I don't have to jump. So you'll really dig up there. And obviously the culture and all that is really cool. What's your favorite ski movie of all time?
I mean, I think the one that definitely brought me into that realm. Like I grew up going to Warren Miller films with my friend Trevor, and I wasn't like, I was sort of a hammerhead competitor. And so my parents wouldn't bring us to the Warren Miller films. I would always go with this other family that was like their annual thing. And that's when I first started to experience sort of that Warren Miller vibe, and I loved it. But my buddy Trevor, he was really into the movie stuff, and he got a yellow handy cam for Christmas, and he was a filmer, and he ended up being a filmer. And so we would go out and start shooting, but it was Blizzard of Oz and and Groove Requiem, that sort of, when like Stumps sort of, when he started making those movies, we were all just like, oh yeah, this is really cool. And so I think Blizzard, it probably stands out the most or sort of the one that I'd seen the most and really sort of gave me that like dream and that notion of trying to get into those myself,
Huge compliment to Greg Stump is that most of the people I interview on this show say that, especially the skiers, right? And, and then we even just had Scott Schmidt on the show a couple episodes ago, and it was cool to hear his story, and he was like, that movie did more for my career than, everything else pretty much combined, which I think is obvious, right? That was such a catapult for that industry. And I love hearing that even for you. Yeah. Blizzard of Oz was just the game changer. What challenges you the most intellectually on a daily basis?
I am doing the Wordle with my kids and wife, and I just started, and these guys kill me. I mean, for some reason, my 11-year-old's like a freak at the Wordle. So that's my current challenge. But I would say on a macro level, understanding probably like the nuance of how to raise a kid without like screwing them up.
With smartphones and internet.
Yes, exactly. That to me is the hardest noodle right now, is just like, where's the line between being the archaic hard ass and sort of, not looking back and saying, what the hell did I do? Why didn't I drop the hammer on that? Or, that was too much advice, too little advice. Like, what are they going to be? But I don't want to tell them what they should be. And, is my advice outdated or, so trying to like do the homework on that and figure that out is definitely the biggest puzzle I think I encounter on a daily basis.
What's your favorite book or books?
I'm reading a book right now, which I'm kind of into, called Breathe. You heard of this one?
I've heard of this. Tell me.
Yeah, it's basically the idea of breathing through your nose, simply put, and the importance of the process of exhalation over inhalation. And it's basically pinning all ills of society and personal issues on, the intake and outtake of breathing and how it's done. And it's kind of looking at different ways you process carbon dioxide and how much you should process carbon dioxide and your heart rate variability. And it's putting it all on that, like all these books do, right? It's like, Malcolm Gladwell and all these guys, they basically, you read the book and all of a sudden you're like, all roads lead to this one thing. It's something to work on. I'm definitely a mouth breather. So that's currently the book I'm into. So yeah, I can't think of my favorite. I mean, I guess I just read the Warren Miller autobiography. That was,
I'd like to read that.
It was pretty good. It took me a little while to get into, but the beginning is definitely like a lot of just stories, but then it gets into like his life, and it was a great read. So just off the top of my head, that was a really good book.
This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Icon Pass. Right now, it's time to claim the last chance for deals, and you and the crew score the best prices on winter 22-23 and get all the early season goods before they go away on April 22nd. Buy now, ride now, with access to a total of 10 destinations by April 11th. Save up to $200 in child passes with the purchase of an adult pass. 21-22 pass holders can claim up to $100 off in renewal discounts for 22-23 and pay it all forward with a payment plan as low as $0 down and 0% APR. Grab your pass at iconpass.com. Today's Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Valle Nevado. Valle Nevado celebrates 34 years, offering North American summer skiing from June to September. Spectacular Andean views, empty slopes, no lift lines, and delicious cuisine paired with Chile's famous wine are all the hallmarks of Valle Nevado vacation. Valle Nevado is a member of the Icon and Mountain Collective and offers all-inclusive packages for every price point. It's no wonder so many international ski teams and pro skiers and snowboarders call Valle Nevado home every summer. So I'm just going to kind of bang through we're going to start with the mogul skiing, and we'll kind of brush through this stuff quickly. But I do want to just introduce our listeners to everything you've done, because a lot of stuff I didn't know. So here's a quick list. So Jonny's good at mogul skiing. So he made the U.S. ski team at 18 in 1993. He won the Olympic gold medal in competition in 1998, and that was with a 360 mute grab that hugely changed skiing. He won a silver medal at the 1999 X Games in Big Air, making him the first skier to win both Olympic gold and X Games gold, which is super cool. And he had to actually kind of petition to the U.S. ski team to allow people to compete in professional events, which I think is really normal now. So thanks for that. You won the 2000 U.S. Freeskiing Open slopestyle. So that's a whole other genre, which again, the ballet skiing came in. And at your second Olympics in 2002, you got fourth place and introduced the dinner roll, which was a huge process that I'm going to touch on here in a minute. You won 15 World Cup events in your career with 4 overall titles. And I think you did these all at a very young age. You're in the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. Rolling Stone has you in their Sports Hall of Fame. 2007, you were put in the U.S. National Ski Hall of Fame. And you took over the voiceovers for Warren Miller as well. And we'll jump into that too. So yeah, let's just really quick. Well, you told us how mogul skiing started for you. How often did you guys drive up to Tahoe to ski? Was that every weekend kind of thing?
Yeah. So we were weekend skiers. I mean, we grew up here in Marin. My dad and mom would just put us in the car every single weekend. My dad skied squaw a bit growing up as a kid. He grew up in Northern California, and so he loved skiing. But then he moved to Puerto Rico, where we were all born.
Oh, that's right.
And yeah, so he didn't ski for like 10 or 15 years or something. I came back when I was 2. We came back in 77. And as soon as he moved back into Marin, he was like, we're going skiing every weekend. He had 3 kind of rambunctious kids, and he just loaded up the car and we went every weekend. And they would get, ski, with other families, just kind of your typical thing. But he put us right away and gave us a couple lessons, and the person who gave us a lesson at Palisades said, hey, put him on Mighty Mites, and my brothers went straight to race team and all that stuff. So, but then it just became a religious thing. Every weekend, every single weekend. We never missed every holiday. That's right.
Well, it's kind of neat to see, though, that because there's a handful of you folks who came out of the Bay. You've got you and my friend Connery Lundeen and JT Holmes and Cody Townsend. Santa Cruz, basically the Bay, that became these pioneering, badass skiers, world class. And what I think is so neat is from weekend skier in Tahoe to pioneer. And I kind of want to touch on that because to me, you really were. I actually randomly was watching your 98 Olympic gold medal run. wasn't really into watching the Olympics. That was when I was just starting to ski myself. I was around 18 years old. And it blew my mind. I wanted to be able to do that. I'd never seen anything like that. So do you think you were a pioneer in the world of skiing?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if you want to pinpoint one single thing, I mean, I think that bringing the dinner roll, which then I'd obviously in the Olympics, I did a cork 7, but to moguls, I think that's the only thing I really brought to it that wasn't, maybe happening already, that I can legitimately say that was, I put myself out there for that, right? Like I pushed that through.
And what did that take? How did you get the Olympic Committee to agree to that? And tell us, what were the rules? There's no invert, so cork was okay. And what was going on?
Yeah. So basically, just a quick history in freestyle, inverted tricks in freestyle. Like freestyle really started as moguls, aerials, and ballet. And everybody in the beginning, it was just moshed. It wasn't even called that. It's just you'd ski a little bit of moguls and then you'd have to catch an air here and there. And then it was like whatever you did. And then when the flat part at the bottom, you do some ballet. So obviously then it progressed and there was aerials. Now aerials got shut down in the 70s because the people were breaking their necks. Ooh. And the ski resorts said, hey, we're done with aerials and, go away. Yeah. So, but that's not really why it wasn't in moguls. The reason it wasn't in moguls was because you couldn't do it in the moguls. I mean, just go to a mogul run, like the West Face at Squaw or my run at Squaw at Palisades. You're not throwing a backflip on any of those moguls, right? Like you'd have to be crazy, right? So,
and that was the original comps. You just said that, but I want to reiterate: there weren't jumps. People just jumped off of moguls and did a trick. That's right.
And that was part of the skill is that you skied and you had to find, and you'd maybe jump. You'd do a transfer to the side, or you'd find a spot, and then you'd have to land on the top of another one, and you'd have to find the fall line. That's why. Right. It's still the nomenclature, the way it's said in the rule book is line, turns and line, because fall line used to be a really hard thing to do and an important thing to do. Anyway, I digress. So anyway, fast forward and I started in 85 or so in moguls. We were still skiing raw mogul courses. They put the course where the moguls were. Whoa. And then you'd have to find a jump. Now, over time, everyone would gravitate sort of towards the same jump. Right. And then eventually people would stop on the course and practice and kick up the jump with their skis, which was technically illegal, but it just started to happen. And then all of a sudden you started to get a lip, right? So airs got bigger, but you're still really just looking at big 360s, maybe a 720, lots of twisters and spreads and daffies and stuff like that. And simultaneously, aerials has come back by this point, right? Now it's sanctioned. The FIS has gotten involved, has backstopped all the resorts, taken on the insurance, created a system of progression where you have to qualify your jumps. You got to go to the water ramps. You got to do 200 on the water ramps. Then you get a certification. Then you can go do it on snow. And that really saved freestyle skiing. And so anyway, aerials was happening as a separate event. That's when I got into it. I started flipping in Mount Hood at a water ramp at a ski camp. Then I went to Placid and, you start qualifying tricks and you learn it on stuff. Anyway, so I was running this simultaneous track. I was learning aerials. I was skiing moguls and doing ballet. Most people were starting to specialize at that point. Okay. So combined was becoming less important. People were just doing moguls or just doing aerials or just doing ballet. And so the whole combined discipline was being, reduced. So fast forward now to 1998. And that's when, 96, obviously you still have these, the ballet gets dropped as a discipline after 92 Olympics, right? So now you're just looking at aerials and moguls. And so I did it all the way up to 96. And then I was finally I did all three up to 96. And I was finally this is ridiculous. I'm not going to be able to do I'm not going to win both events at the Olympics. They're too divergent, right? To be a great aerialist and be a great mogul skier now they're too far apart.
You got to specialize.
You got to specialize because aerials is like gymnastics and your form has to be so perfect. And so and I was I'm a skier. I like skiing. I'm not really I love flips and stuff, but I'm not gymnastics is not why I got into this. Right. So, and this shit's scary. Triple.
Oh God. It's so scary. It's scary to watch.
Dude, that's triple kickers. It never gets easy. You look at that thing and you're like, yeah. It's I
got to do 3 flips right now.
Right. I'm going to hit this half pipe and we go, instead of dropping back into it, I'm going to go straight up out of it. So obviously in 90, the free skiing movement had started, right? And you can go back to where you want to pin that with, all the way back to Schmidt, bounce back to Kreitler and McConkey, however you want to trace that whole path, that was moving. And then that was starting the idea of being a non-mogul skier, freestyle or alpine racer and making movies. and then obviously you had the French Canadian kids who were mogul skiers coming out of Quebec, good mogul skiers, but they were a little younger, trying to make the Olympics. They were the ones who started doing snowboard style tricks in the terrain park in Tremblant or wherever they were. And they brought that onto the mogul tour, literally. And that's where I encountered them, a little bit on the mogul tour, a little bit in Blackcomb. And they were the ones who started grabbing their skis, doing 360 mute grabs. And so I started skiing with them, and then, obviously ripped off the mute grab from those two guys. And then awesome. I had more mogul experience. I was older. I was winning more World Cups. And so I took that and added it into my mogul run and took it to 98. And, and the rest, I did the 360 mute grab and won. And
that was awesome.
So thanks. And so simultaneously, those guys were starting. They had bailed when they didn't make the Olympics. They bailed on moguls, and they went and started, the U.S. Open in Vail, and that was what JP did, that mute grab and won, and it was starting. All that stuff was happening, and I really wanted to be a part of it because I just thought it was cool. For me, freestyle skiing supposed to change all the time. Yes. So so immediately after 98, I finished off the World Cup tour. And then I immediately jumped with both feet into that whole world. And, and that's when I started to be okay, now I need a different trick because X Games coming up. And I genuinely, I loved snowboarding as well. I loved the rodeo flip. JF was doing kind of like a rodeo 5 type of trick that I had seen. And I was like, I loved this trick on the trampoline called a toilet bowl. Do you know this trick?
I don't. It sounds funny.
Toilet bowl is one of the hardest bed tricks on a trampoline you can do. Okay. And it's, bed tricks are stuff that you don't do from your feet. So stomach drops, stomach drop backflips called a Cody, and I'd spent obviously the better part of my youth on a trampoline because, that's the way you do it. So this toilet bowl, you land on your back and you tilt your knees a little bit, whichever way you want to spin. So I'm a left spinner. So a little bit to the left, and you got to do what they call a kaboom with your heels. So one of the harder tricks in trampoline bed tricks is called a kaboom. And a kaboom is when you land flat on your back, but you time it just so that your heels hit right after your back hits, which allows you to go into a huge back flip. Okay. So it kips you into a back flip. And so a toilet bowl is you land and you kaboom your heels just slightly at an angle, and it allows you to do a perfectly flat spin in a 360. So you're not rotating. Your chest is to the sky the whole time, and you're rotating flat, and then you land again and you try to do it again. So this rotation took me a long time to learn on the trampoline. It's like one of those frustrating moves. And anyway, I sort of envisioned doing that combined with sort of the rodeo and the thing that JF was doing all the way around to 720. And so I remember I was hanging with Evan Divbig. He had a hovel and underneath the tram that he and Shane Anderson lived in. And we talked about it a little bit. And I had kind of just imagined it in my head. And then I was up in Whistler, and I woke up one day and I was like, I can do this thing. I had it in my mind, when you see a trick and you can visualize it. Totally. And I'm like, I'm just going to try it. So I went up to the wind lip, and it was a wind lip session. And I just imagined this takeoff where I the rodeo takeoff on snowboarding is you're carving. And this was what snowboarding really brought to skiing, was this idea that you weren't going to go straight off the takeoff. You could carve. The snowboarders started carving one way and throwing themselves the other, incredible physics. And so I tried to carve in to the left, and then I threw my body flat just like they would do in a rodeo. So and it just, so I could get myself into that toilet bowl position, and the thing wound up, and you just absolutely exploded. I think I got roughly around, and then I just packed it in and dislocated my shoulder.
Shit.
So yeah, I was a
very first one.
I have to say that. Back to the backstory I told you earlier about my shoulder. Oh yeah. So I didn't actually get surgery on my shoulder for 2 years after I hurt it, because I was misdiagnosed as an AC separation. And so I just gritted through it, and it would just, in a certain positions, it would be fine. But in some positions it would dislocate and pop back in. And then I'd be down for a couple days till I could get it to calm down a little bit. So anyway, I dislocated my shoulder, popped back in or whatever. And then I went down and rested in Blackcomb. And then I'm like, okay, I got to go to the water ramp.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Yeah.
They had built a water ramp there by that time.
Smart.
So I went to the water ramp and I started to get it down and I dialed it in, and then I took it up to the glacier. And it was funny because Johnny DeCesare was filming I think he was filming for 13 at that time.
Okay.
And he was posted up on the Camp of Champions jump. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to try this thing. He's like, I want to film it. I'm like, no, dude, you're going to burn me if I miss it. You guys, it's like, because at that time it was like the French Canadian kids versus me a little bit, because I had basically stole their trick and got famous for it.
Yeah, and you're American, they're Canadian. I love it.
Totally. So, they were always filming with Johnny, and I love Johnny. And actually, it's in I think Degenerates is I think where it is.
Oh, good. Yeah, good
maybe might be 13. Yeah, another great movie actually.
Team 13.
Yeah. I'll put that on the top of the list too. But I ended up doing it on the slopestyle. I ended up nailing it right away on the jump, and it became like sort of my trick. I feel like that people bag on me on social media all the time as it not being, but truthfully, I do think I was the first to do that flat spin. People get confused because the trick I did in the Olympics was not that trick. So that's a story we can blast through quickly right now. And that'll get you up to date on that.
Let's do it, man. It's all about stories here.
All right. So, so I figured out this flat spin 7, which we called the dinner roll because, and that's when I think I was sitting around with Evan and Shane Anderson. I conflated those two stories. That was the following winter, and we were trying to figure out what to name it, like interesting roll dinner. It had a roll feel to it. So I think we started with roll, and then it was like, is it a 720 roll or an interesting roll? And I don't know what the hell we were thinking, but I came up with dinner roll, and I never thought I'd have to explain it, but I just thought it was kind of like I know what my rationale was. Everyone was naming tricks after themselves. People were trying to name tricks after themselves. And I know people find this amazingly surprising, but I was not going to name it after myself. I was like,
that's good. It's like when you grow up learning science, it's all named after some guy, and you just called it what it is. You could actually remember it.
Exactly. So, and I always thought it was funny in snowboarding that there was like, isn't there like a trick called roast beef? And like, they always had like these funnier names. And I was like, okay, we'll go with a food name, dinner roll. Yeah. So anyway, so now I'm fully immersed in the free ride slope world, right? And we're getting ready to go do X Games. And so I went and did the dinner roll that year at X Games. And I had that back and forth battle with JF where I was winning with the dinner roll 7. I wanted to do it to 9, but I just had my directional mogul skis because the K2 poachers were not sturdy enough for me. And I took JF all the way to the end, and he did the first switch 7 in comp and won. And so he and I had this great little like tee off. So anyway, that was kind of like a seminal moment and all that stuff. And then I took it to the US Open the following year in 2000, which you mentioned, one of my really proud moments actually. And won the US Open with a dinner roll 9 actually, and a switch flat spin 7 and some rail stuff and all that stuff. And so
very cutting edge at the time.
This stuff was like
people weren't even imagining this stuff yet.
Totally. This was like the first ever skiing slopestyle contest, literally,
so fun.
And so and these were huge tricks, man, huge tricks. And now they're just like little nothing tricks people do, like, as like just as a warm up, like a butter warm up. Yeah. So then I'm like, well, what the hell am I doing? It's 2000. The Olympics is coming back. I actually, despite what people think, I was heavily motivated to go back to the Olympics because I wanted to bring this trick into the moguls. Like, it gave me this. I wasn't super motivated to go back to the Olympics. Like, I'd spent my whole life banging around moguls and doing all the training. And when I won the Olympics in '98, in my mind, I was done. Yeah. Like, finished. Thank you. That was freaking super stressful. My whole life revolved around that. Moving on, moving on. But, those 2 years I went free skiing and did all that stuff. Then I was like, in 2000, I was like, oh, actually, this could be cool. Like, if I can do this trick in the bumps, that's pretty cool. So that basically motivated my whole path back to 2002. So I had to go through this whole process because the ski team had basically like, you know, I left the ski team, but they weren't like, oh, hey, anytime you want to come back, come back. They were like kind of pissed off about it. Like it was sort of like they saw the X Games a little bit as like a competitor, frankly. So did FIS. Mm-hmm. And so they had new coaches and everything too. So I had to like grind my way back on, get results. And they gave me like 2 World Cups to try to do it. So basically abandoned the trick. But as far as and I ended up being able to get back on the team and in time. But so simultaneously though, I was like, I want to do this trick, the Olympics. And they were like, well, we knew it was going to be controversial because inverted tricks were not allowed. Now jumps in the moguls were being built. Like you could certainly do inverted tricks. I think Shane Socks had done, McConkey had done a flip in a pro event. Like they were doable in competitions.
Yeah. The jumps are big enough now.
The jumps were definitely big enough to do flips. So, and they had landings somewhat. They didn't have the landings they have now, but it was easy. So, but the flips were not allowed. That was not allowed. And I knew they were not going to allow flips. They weren't going to be like, oh, we're going to change the whole rule now, because Moseley wants to do it. Now, all of a sudden, everybody can't do flips. So I was like, okay, well, this dinner roll, this dinner roll is not quite inverted. If I can do it in different ranges. I can do it more inverted. I can do it less. And so Cooper and I, and my coach, went up to like late spring at Palisades. I mean, it's like Gold Coast had a patch of snow on it, maybe the size of a football field. And I mean, it must have been May, might have even been June.
Nothing left.
And we built this little jump because the FIS meetings were coming up in Switzerland. And they were like, you need to submit it. Like, it has to get in the books. It's not like a free ride contest. This has to be submitted, approved, given a degree of all that stuff. So I went up there and I built this little kicker, and we filmed the dinner roll from 4 different angles and sent it with our representative to show that it wasn't inverted. And they submitted it and presented it, and they voted on it, and they approved it by 1 vote.
Really? Whoa. So barely squeaked through.
And, in the end, that's sort of what hurt me. And I was psyched because I was like, yes, they approved it. But the devil was in the details. The degree of difficulty they assigned it was the same as a quad twister, which is just a much easier trick to do. Yes. You can do it at speed. And so anyway, that's part 2 of the story where I did it and I was slow, and I was counting on the judges to overinflate my score because they thought it was so cool, but they kind of just gave me like great execution, which when you multiply that by the same degree as difficulty as a quad twister, it didn't quite give me the bump I needed. But it changed the following year. They made the trick worth more points. They allowed inverted tricks. And so I did leave my stamp on my sport, which, changed the sport forever. So yeah, in that way, to bring it full circle, I will claim some pioneer status.
I love it, man. I love it. That's so good. Because I was just going to say, to answer my question, were you a pioneer? He says yes. I agree. Your old coach, I'm close with Hank DeVray. You're close with Raymond DeVray. Your old coach Raymond said in that Olympics, in the 2002 Olympics, this is his quote: "Nobody remembers who won, but people remember that Jonny did the dinner roll, and that changed mogul skiing forever." And it did. And so you very much were a pioneer. I love that you owned it there at the end. And now I think that might have led to what I think is a super cool trick. All the mogul bumpers now do D-spin 720s, which is, how far off from a dinner roll do you think a D-spin 720 is?
I'm glad you brought that up because I definitely want to clear this up for everybody.
Okay, good.
Because...
Are you listening, Michael Douglas?
Yeah. Because the trick I actually ended up doing in the Olympics was not the dinner roll that I had created for the X Games and had done well, in the slopestyle contest I talked about. And I ended up basically doing a cork 7 in the Olympics.
Okay.
It was a cork 7. I wouldn't call it a D-spin. A D-spin is more inverted.
It's more inverted.
A D-spin's more like a back full with a cross. So that would have got me probably tossed. But I did a cork 7, no doubt about it.
So would you say, did your feet get above your head in the Olympics?
It all depends on which angle you're looking at. I would say, if you freeze it in the right frames, probably you could potentially make that argument. but it was close. But I will say for all the people out there that, are like the dinner roll is you did So what happened was the way the dinner roll works is when I do it right, I carve up the jump and I carve to the left and I hurl my body flat over basically the center of inertia over the middle. So like as I'm carving left, I hurl my right arm. I actually take my right arm and I dip my arm up underneath and try to go flat to the sky as I pull my left arm around. So that gets me that initial flat spin. And then the rest just takes care of itself. The weight of the boots and everything. Once you complete that first set, and I would get into a mute grab, or I can get in Japan or whatever. And then once I let go of that, the weight of your boots and skis zings you out into a 7.
And for our 9, listeners, whatever. He's doing like freestyle Tai Chi right now and showing me these moves. So you guys can't see it, but he's really going through it. Continue.
Yeah. So, but the physics of this trick, I could not do it in a mogul course. And I went down to Chile the summer of 2001 would be Olympic year. We were training in a full mogul course. And every time I tried to do this trick, I could not stop the inertia coming in. So I would be all set. I'd be coming in, I'd land and my skis would load up and they'd compress. I'd hit the next bump and I'd just explode. In fact, I knocked myself out like a couple times. And it just got to the point where I basically had to abandon it. And the reason is because a mogul jump has this very quick transition. You don't have the amount of air that you take. And mogul jumps are not made to drift at all. Like, it's a very linear takeoff. Mm-hmm. And so no matter how I did it, I couldn't slow the rotation enough to allow me to land in the moguls. And so I abandoned it. I couldn't do it. So, and I had to go back on the World Cup tour and I started competing again and I had to get a win to get on the team. And so I went back to whatever tricks I knew and it came right down to the wire. Like I failed. And then I ended up winning like a World Cup, maybe 3 weeks out from the Olympics, which put me on the team. So I immediately, Cooper and I jumped on a plane, went home. Andy Worth built me a course at Steamboat. We just started training and I started to figure it out. And basically what I figured out was that if I dropped into more of a cork 7, so in my mind, I was thinking more like D-spin, back full, which for me, back full is the easiest trick in the book. It's actually easier than a layout. Back full is the easiest trick in the world of skiing once you learn it. So I started to roll into a little bit more of what became a cork 7, because with a cork 7, you actually jump up first. Like you can go straight up in the first and then wrap. You can pop with the dinner roll. I could pop, but I'm already kind of like leaned over. So that's where I had to get that whip. So if I just go straight up first and then rotate into it, it allowed me to stay in that linear plane. And like overnight, I could do it 9 times. I mean, I was like, my proficiency went from 0 to 99%.
So you really had to switch from the dinner roll to a cork.
To a cork 7. Mm-hmm. But now we're like 2 weeks out from the Olympics, right?
Oh, shit. And the trick has changed.
And the trick has changed. And I wasn't going to be like, hey, I changed my trick. Right?
Yeah, no.
So I just rolled in there like nothing happened and did the cork 7 and never said boo.
Wow. Well, I love it. I wonder how many people know that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've started to tell the story just because, in the beginning,
it's been 20 years, so it's finally lost its teeth, and it's already doing that. But I love it. We're just going to call it a Snowbrains exclusive.
Exactly. So anyway, I had to share that.
That's great. So we're going to have, because we're going a little over time here, we're going to basically make another rapid fire section and have these questions be kind of open-ended. And let's start with Warren Miller. So when did you start doing voiceovers for Warren Miller?
Yeah, the Warren Miller VO started, I think it's like 11, maybe 12 years ago. Yeah.
Long time ago now.
Yeah, it went quick. Obviously, Warren had stopped and they had been using a lot of, Warren's tidbits and stuff, which they still continue to use. Uh-huh. And they had tried a couple other guys. And then, I don't know, I had filmed with Warren, over the years, many different times with Warren Miller Entertainment, I should say. And then they Max Burby called me and was like, dude, you're going to voice the film. And I'm like, whoa, you're going to freaking ruin it. Like, let's do a test and let's test it out. Let's see at the screen, who likes it. Cause I don't want to be like ruining this movie, and he was like, no, you're coming out. You got to do it. And I'm like, all right. So came out and went in the booth in the Boulder office, and everyone was in the soundboard. And I mean, there must have been like 20 people in there, and I'm narrating it. And I think Mike had written it or something like that at that point.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. And I could just see the disappointment on everyone's face, it's like, because at the time,
no Warren Miller.
Exactly. That's what it felt like too. And, and then that was, in the door opens. I've told the story before, and in comes like a 6-pack of Corona. And that made things significantly better. And we got loosened
there you
up.
go.
And, it loosened it up a little bit. And over the years, the first one was a little rough, and it's gotten better. I will say I can now sort of sit there and listen to myself. Like, I think we've understood that the audiences have been very nice. Like, they're coming around. I think the writing is moving towards me a little bit more. And so we're working with what we got. But dude, we miss him. It's like you miss his voice, but someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. And you've done great. Cause to me, I love Warren Miller, and I love Warren Miller movies. They're the most watched ski movies. But to me, the transition was soft, man. There was some overlay. Like, your voice doesn't feel too different from his. The cadence is similar. And I think it's cool. And obviously Warren Miller movies are very much moved into, modern free skiing and modern adventure. And you very much represent that. And I think it works great. Next question is Mad Tricks video game. So just, I think a lot of us, I thought it was really fun. I didn't play it very much, but tell us, what is the Jonny Moseley's Mad Tricks video game?
Yeah. So it's funny. There's been people come up to me all the time, and I'm kind of like, I'm sorry. Cause I feel like, I feel like I'm going to ruin the whole landscape for skiers to get video games, but then they're like, oh no, I love that game coming up. So a guy named Trip Hawkins approached me, longtime video game maker pioneer. He was at EA, and then he created the first video game on a disc, like just a badass individual in that world.
Wow.
And I ran into him somewhere, and he was like, why don't you have a ski game? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you want to do it? And I'm like, let's do it. So we started working on that around 2000, I think, or 2001 or something. And anyway, I brought in as many. I was like, okay, we got to get Tanner and, Evan, and just everyone who was Skogan, and, everyone in that realm. We gotta, this is our game. Like, everyone's going to get involved. And so we started going through the process, and it takes just forever. I mean, there's so much to it. We had some great guys working on it. And, it came out to launched right around the '02 Olympics. And we obviously did the whole, like, what if you could ski in San Francisco thing. And we were modeling it a little bit on Tony Hawk Pro Skater, but we also modeled a little bit on SSX, which was more of a surreal version of snowboarding and stuff like that. So, and that was our goal. I think it was fairly, panned by gamers, but somewhat loved by skiers. So that was kind of a bummer. Like, it didn't have, I think the functionality of it may have been rushed a little bit, if you will. I think we could have spent a little more time. I got to say, I'm not a huge gamer, so it's like and I wasn't involved in that part too much. But I think if you look at it from the reviews and stuff like that, maybe the gamification element of it wasn't as up to par, but it did gain some cult following, and people still talk to me about it a lot. So,
and I gotta tell, you're such a, let's just say, distinguished gentleman at this point. And so I really want our listeners to go and look up the trailer for Mad Tricks, because it is Jonny just straight up being a punk. Like, it's like, you guys are like partying and playing pool and break dancing, and girls are flashing, and you're signing people, and it's pretty.
Yeah.
I think I feel like it is a bit of a time capsule of at least what's perceived to be the ski world party scene in the 90s in Whistler. So let's just, next one really quick, rapid fire here again, ski movies. So when you burst onto the scene in 98 and you were big time, very famous, 2002, between those two Olympics, you're doing all these crazy tricks, as you explained, on the front lines of these amazing cork, flat, multiple spin tricks. You were in the ski movies also, in my eyes. You're with Shane McConkey and crew up at Shredding Lines in Alaska, and I think MSP or TGR movies. And it kind of looked like you we were really enjoying that, but you kind of walked away from it too, which I was like, blew my mind, because that's all I wanted as a kid. I just want to be in the ski movies. So I guess the roundabout question here is, what was it like being in the ski movies? What was awesome about it? What didn't you like?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry to squander your, but
squander my dreams, Jonny.
Yeah. Sorry to take it for granted, I guess. Yeah, no, I thought that's an interesting point. I mean, yeah, I was really excited to go to get into that, right? And first, I'd filmed a little bit with Warren Miller before, but it was mostly mogul stuff. And then obviously I had that opportunity to go with TGR and did that trip in Alaska for the Realm, which was actually, I thought, was some of my better skiing, and had a lot of good opportunities there. And then I got the opportunity to film with, Matchstick, who I always admired and loved. And it was like the epic trip, right? With Shane and Chris Davenport and freaking Seth was there.
Seth Morrison.
Forgot. Seth was on that trip. I had filmed with Gaffney, right? He had filmed me. He was kind of my first alt besides Warren Miller guy to film with. We had filmed that movie Breathe and Squaw. So Gaffney and I he had sort of seen what I was capable of doing and all that stuff. And I had notions of really going deep. Like I wanted to do all these tricks in the backcountry and start, and there's one, actually I just pulled a clip that reminded me I was in Kirkwood of me doing this kind of similar to what Candide does. It's like a tail grab. It's like a blunt tail grab, sort of cork seven, or if you will, or,
those always look sick.
And off a cliff. And so I was starting to go down that route, and I was into it. I will say a couple things. That was, 99, 2000. And then obviously I pulled out completely because I was getting ready to go back to the Olympics. So that was the break that, is so apparent, because basically I had to go back and compete on the, lower circuit and train. And when you start training for moguls, it's like nothing, that's it. I mean, you're doing box jumps until you're blue in the face and training camps. And so I did a little more filming. Like if you saw, I brought Flip and those guys, that freeze cover I did was during a training camp in Chile, the same one I was talking about. So, but pretty much stopped filming completely right there. So, and I did the Warren Miller 50 with JP Eau Claire up in that Wiggly's and stuff. So I laid down some good work, but I will say, and then I bailed to basically train for the Olympics and go to O2. And then I never really went back into it and this is going to be a little bit of an adventure in my mind for a couple of reasons. I think after O2, I basically stopped. I got that gig hosting Saturday Night Live right after the Olympics, which got me the gig hosting the show on MTV. Insane. And so all of a sudden I was transitioning into this other world. And I also had tried to go back to school in 98 too, but it didn't. I just was like, what am I doing? My career is just getting started. I had transferred to UCLA and I was wanting to go back to school and maybe figure out if there was something else I love to do. And it was more just like, I want to finish this. I started school. I want to finish it. And so then after O2, I decided to try again. I had done Saturday Night Live, got tired to go to Jamaica right away. Literally while I was still in New York, MTV called me and had me come in for audition and hired me right away. And then, so they were like, hey, 6 weeks in Jamaica, bring your girlfriend and get paid. And I was like, let's go.
Let's do it.
And then I got asked to deliver the commencement speech for Berkeley. And so
nice.
I did that.
Go Bears.
And so I was kind of like on the, did you go there too or something?
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about that too.
That's right. And so I was kind of moving through, and then I had said, the guys who hired me or brought me in to do that, hire me to do the speech there. I said, well, I'm actually enrolled at UCLA. Can I transfer in here? And they said, send an application. So I did that, and they let me transfer in, and then I started school there.
That's great.
But I guess those aren't, I'm not sure that I would have and so I continued to work and do a little bit of skiing, but I work for MTV. But I think the truth is that a couple things. When I went up and filmed with Shane and those guys in Canada, I think I got a healthy dose of what it really takes to do what they do. I got, there's what you see from as a fan, and then there's what they actually do to create those amazing film segments that we love so much. And what I saw out of Shane and Seth was like a crazy amount of work and discipline and just passion for making a 12-minute segment every year that takes him all freaking year.
So much work.
Ready to go at the drop of a hat, to go anywhere for weeks at a time, and then be stressed out, take a bunch of risk. Like Shane skied this line in that film, and I remember him and Scott arguing because it was like this crazy billy goat line. I mean, it was like a 12 stager.
Whoa.
And he even lost a ski in the middle of the stage, like overexposure. And I was like, that was crazy. Like, I'm not skiing. I'm not going anywhere near that line, And so I think I kind of was like, if that's what it takes, I think I was a little burned out, right? Just skiing in general. I felt like I'd done it my whole life. And so for me to go full bore into that, was going to be basically going back out on the road again, like what I had just got away from on the World Cup, and sort of, it's all in, right? And I remember them calling because Shane was doing there's something about McConkey, and they wanted to do the flip side, something about Moseley. And I was like, we'd split the costs, and it would be cool. And I regret doing, but I'm like, I'm not going to be able to put the time in to do a good segment, like I now realize you guys film every freaking day. Like I tell people, like, you see a great segment in a movie, like that could have taken them all season, right? Yeah. It might've taken them 2 freaking seasons to come up with that segment. And so I just got a totally different perspective on what it takes to be one of those guys. And I just was like, I don't think that's for me. There's a couple things I wish I would have laid down, like certain tricks and things, I just kind of had all these opportunities to do a little more cushy stuff and make a bunch of money doing this and go to school. And I just was like, I was just a little bit like not willing to do what those guys were doing and go down that route. And so that's why I kind of started to transition. And I also have a deep paranoia, and Evan Rapps used to tell me this all the time. So you can't predict the future, dude. Because I'd be like stressing from this deal versus this deal. And so I was always like concerned with where's this transition? What am I doing next? And like, it's one of the reasons I didn't go to another Olympics is I was like, yeah, I could go probably. I think I still got it in me, but then what? Then I'm going to start the transition. Later. Now I'm 32, is 30 instead of 26. And now whatever I'm doing next. And, I was doing well, like making plenty of money, but still probably not enough to like be done.
Right.
And so I had a little bit of this sort of like, and I thought genuinely when I went back to school, I might find something totally different, like architecture or some of the stuff I studied, and I enjoyed that stuff. So I wanted to see if maybe there was another path that I'd be as passionate about to go on. And then, I ended up just kind of going back to being me and getting more into TV and sort of, just coming back a little bit into the ski industry, and they kind of welcomed me back at a little bit different level. And I sort of over time have lost my appetite for risk too. So it all kind of came together. But yeah, no one's ever really asked me about that. But yeah, I pretty much, walked away from it, sort of unintentionally and then by design.
Well, that's great. Well, that's my whole goal here is to ask people questions they haven't heard before, especially not in the public forum. Because you're right, filming is really intense, and you pretty much, as Scott Schmidt just told us, they turn the camera on you, and you are expected to have the run of your life. And you don't actually ski that much, right? Because you're waiting around for light and all these other things. But you made that transition from hardcore skier to big time TV personality. And what's felt like overnight, and you're saying that kind of how it was. You basically Saturday Night Live to MTV Road Rules. And I'll list a couple more here. You announced 3 Olympics with NBC. You've hosted many World Cup events with NBC. You just did another Olympic show that you just told us about. Obviously, you hosted Saturday Night Live. You've also hosted American Ninja Warrior. And you also organized the first urban big air contest, which in the streets of San Francisco, which was epic, basically on the north side of San Francisco, overlooking the bay where the trolley cars are. We can't even get into that. What's the most challenging TV spot you've done?
I guess challenging. I mean, acting is really hard, and doing it well, especially for someone who's competitive and wants to get it right. It's like it's hard. So one spot pops into my mind. I did a spot for sprint at Mammoth. Well, it was part Mammoth, part in LA. The first part of the spot is kind of more like funny because they had brought a stunt double for me.
Oh, yeah. And you're a stuntman already.
To do the skiing. And
that's rad, to do the skiing.
Yeah. This guy was like, I hadn't heard of him. He wasn't a pro. He was like a racer out of Sun Valley. And, and so they had built a trap door at the top of the mountain, like a stage trap door, but it was huge. It was built to be big enough for skis to stand on with skis. Because the premise of the spot was that I ski up, I fall into a crevasse, and then, I use my sprint Nextel walkie-talkie to call my buddies to get out. Right?
A mixed message there. I love it. Continue.
Exactly. So the first part was I ski down this little. It's just a little like steep but short little couple turns, and then I hit this mark, and then the trap door opens, and I go into the trap door like I fell in the crevasse. That was the first part of the shot, and that's what they had the stunt double for because
nice.
I was actually kind of in the Olympic window. I think it was either the Olympic year or a year and a half out or something close enough to the window. So they brought the stunt double, which in hindsight, I should have been like, yeah, great. But I was like,
you don't get hurt.
Yeah. I was like, dude, anyone finds out I'm using a stunt double, I'm toast. Like I'm a 26-year-old. Like I used to, think like that, right? 24-year-old, like I'm a pro, dude. Like I'm cool,
Yeah.
So I'm like, sorry, bro, you can't touch this thing. So I skied up and I hit the thing and dropped into the thing. Not that big deal. But anyway, so
funny.
That was funny. And then we went to LA, and this was probably the harder part of the shoot, but we were, filming the crevasse scene, which I can send you this ad. It's actually pretty funny. So the idea is now I fall in the crevasse, and there's all these like people who have been in that crevasse for years, like in old ski suits,
nice.
and they see me fall in. Yeah. And they see me fall in, and they come out and they're like, you got a sandwich? Yeah, they're hungry. They're looking at me. And so I have to do this acting like I just fell, and I'm saying it's not a sandwich, some little line. And these directors, I mean, it was just visible that I could not deliver that line the way they wanted it to be delivered,
Yeah.
And I just remember leaving that thing and never feeling like I got it. And, the ad turned out fine, but every time I watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, I did miss that a little bit.
Cringe
I couldn't get
yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of a silly story, but that's what I remember as being a challenging part of, trying to be a TV, commercial guy.
God, even just one little line. Okay. And we got to keep moving, but I just really quick.
Yeah.
What was it like being on David Letterman? That is just so huge to me. What was it like? I just watched you.
I mean, that was the time of my life when I just was like literally floating around on cloud nine. I mean, I just won. It was just like, dude, anything that happens from here on out now is gravy. Like that was just the craziest thing that happened to me.
You made it. You've made it in life.
I made it. And that was just, more validation. But, it was a crazy show when they built the ramp. It was probably the stupidest thing I could have ever done. Right.
Oh, I didn't see that part.
Well, I don't know which Letterman you saw. I was on it twice.
Oh, that's why.
The second time was like not really that great. The first time was right after the 98 Olympics.
Oh, got it.
And they put me on from Nagano the morning after I won. So I was like,
damn,
blasted. And I showed him this piece of Texas toast that I brought from the cafeteria, and he thought it was hilarious. And so they called and were like, we want him on as soon as he comes home. So I came home, I flew to New York, and he did the whole show. They put like a ramp. Remember like the ramp that Tara Takitis wrecked herself on? This was way more sketchy. This was like a Craig Peterson invert ramp to an airbag, and he wanted me to be on the show and be on the airbag, and no other guests, and it was like just me and Letterman. So I went in the studio and we did the interview, and it was great. And then we went out and I did the jump, and I got down. Like I ended up doing, I was trying to do 360 mute grab, but the first time I went off this jump, it was so dry. I got to the end of the jump and I was not going to make it. So I dove off the end of the jump and did a branny just to get to the airbag. I mean, super sketchy. It landed on my skis, landed backwards on the airbag in a branny. That's the only way I could get to the damn bag. And then I'm like, dude, you guys got to cut the top off. Like it's too, for me to do a 360, it is too inverted. Like I need to be able to pop. And so they cut it off. And then I had to stand back and be like, okay, well, where do we put the airbag? Like super sketchy. The ambulance waiting there with the doors open.
It's just on the streets of New York City?
Right out back of the studio. Yeah. I mean, it's a stupid thing, but I lived and trick pony stuff. But
pulled it off, man. Nice. I love that. All right. Well, let's hit, I love that story. Let's hit Berkeley really quick. Cause I went to Berkeley too. I was on the ski team there. I had a blast. It was a great experience for me. I think that was pivotal in almost everything else I've done since. A, connections. B, just having, that experience and that learning challenge. What was your experience at Berkeley like, and what did you study?
No, it was incredible. I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here right now. So I just, I always wanted to go to college and have a college experience, but obviously I kept delaying it. Right. And, defer. And so finally I went back to kind of committed to it full time, and it was cool. I mean, I was old. Like in my mind, I thought I was 26 when I started.
It's not
maybe. I know. That's what I thought. It's not old. But when you get there, like, a kid who's 18 who just got out of college. That's the classes I was in.
That's true.
They're like babies.
Yeah.
And, so I immediately kind of realized, okay, this is not going to be like, let's go college experience. Like, I'm like Will Ferrell old school style.
Yeah.
So it became a little bit more like, a work transaction and, like I do my thing. But I originally wanted to study sort of like econ. I love business stuff. That's the stuff that keeps me interested all the time. And so I was going to try to do the business school there, but I couldn't get in. It was like, I had to take all my math again and all this crap,
screw that.
And so I ended up doing I had a great professor in American studies who said, hey, this is like, you can study all this stuff. You just, what do you want to study? Like make a thesis. You have to write a thesis. That's the only thing, it's like, you only have to take 6 classes towards the core, but in the end, you have to write it's a mini thesis. It's not like a PhD thesis or anything.
Right.
And that was just like the best thing ever. She was amazing. So I ended up taking all this stuff. I took, stuff from the business school, marketing, econ. I took a bunch of she had these amazing classes on sort of like advertising and the effect on, media and all that stuff. And so I took a bunch of architecture. I thought I might go that direction and all that stuff. But I ended up, technically my major was advertising and popular culture.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So it ended up being really interesting and
sort of appropriate for your career in television.
It was. It actually did, kind of. One thing it really did teach me, which I was very weak in, was writing and storytelling. And I mean storytelling so much, but how to like organize an argument, right? And so it dug into the thing I really did not enjoy. So that was good. It kind of bolstered that part of it. So yeah, that was a great experience. And I didn't end up sort of like going into like a regular career, but I'm really glad I did it. Oh, consumer and popular cultures. That was it.
Consumer and popular culture. That's perfect. I mean, because you're
consumer
kind of a pop culture person and TV person. So
right. Looking back at it, absolutely.
Yeah. Strategic.
Yeah.
And what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2000, I'm going to say 10. Must have been 10.
Yeah. So I was 2001. So we missed each other a lot.
Yeah.
Because we're not too far off. I think you're 2 years older than me. So, yeah. So if you went back later on. So the last question is, what's next? What's next for you and your life's journey, Jonny?
God, man. You asked like the hardest questions, the ones that just,
keeping you on your toes.
Well, my kid's going to high school, my older one, my other one is 6. So these are like critical years that I want to try to stick. So everything's sort of like, career is here, but really, just sort of trying to, be there and figure that all out for them. And plus it's great. It's like the best thing ever. I'm already missing them. Like they're too old already. So there's that part. I would say professionally, I mean, I've got a pretty good thing going on right here. I don't see myself veering too far from it. I love all the diversity I have and, bouncing between the different companies I work with, like Peter Glenn and Palisades and Tipsy Elves, K2 and Warren Miller. Like I really have a good time trying to help them. I mean, my roles have changed. Like, I'm not really out there doing a lot of things worth filming, but I can help them in a lot of different ways in how they position their products and helping them sell stuff. And so I like that. That's joyful to me. So I see myself doing a little bit more of that, probably less rad skiing. Like I'm definitely obviously not doing much of it now and less of that, and just kind of working around the industry a little bit more. And that's about it.
That's perfect. Because it looks like your body's holding up great. So you got more years in it. No more backflips to the neck.
Yeah, exactly.
Which sounds like, if I'm doing the math right, you were about 40. Well,
yeah.
So Jonny, that's all I got for you, man. So yeah, thank you so much, John. I hugely appreciate you being on the show. And hopefully we get to hang out and ski together soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Snowbrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about Snowbrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Snowbrains. Today's Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Vi Novato. Live the endless winter and don't let your skis get lonely. Ski and ride the magical Andes this summer at Vi Novato, starting June 17th. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Icon Pass. Next season, Icon Pass is dialing up the stoke and welcoming 3 new legendary destinations to its family of mountains. Get ready to explore the storied slopes of Chamonix in France, the sun-drenched scenes of Sun Valley in Idaho, and the powdery, pillow-deep history of Snow Basin in Utah. Claim it all at iconpass.com before April 22nd, when prices go up $100 and spring promos end. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Jared White, music by Chad Crouch, and I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.